welcome back to another amazing episode 52 Authors, 52 Weeks with me, your host, Dr. Lisa L. Campbell, the Growth Motivator. And I am so excited about our author for this week because her book really speaks to what I believe we all are, but she has been bold enough to put her story, her journey in her book, and I have it on my Amazon Kindle. And the book is, it looks like somebody's trying to send me a message. The book is Overcomer by Jacqueline Williams. Welcome to the show. And why don't you tell our listening, viewing audience a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk a little bit about the book. Everybody that watches the show, we can't tell you everything that's in the book because we want you to get your own copy. But tell us about your background.
Well, I'm Jacqueline Williams. I am a author, a podcast host, and I am a watchman intercessor. I have one son. I live in Mississippi, and I I ministers. I go out and do like it's like evangelized ministry out in the streets and opening or in my community. And I am also dedicated to God and to the assignment that He has called me to be.
I love it. It's something wonderful when you are walking in your purpose, you're in alignment with your assignment. And I think that you get to that place, doesn't matter how old you are, right? You get to that place when you really start to align yourself with not what you want to do, but what you have been called to do. So I got to ask this question. You mentioned Mississippi. And I'm reminded that I was in Mississippi for a full year in Clarksdale, Mississippi. I attended Kahoma Junior College. They had a single parent program, and so I went there for a year. So, what part of Mississippi are you from?
I'm from Blue Mountain, Mississippi. It's about 30 minutes from Tupelo, Mississippi.
Okay. Oh, and Tupelo. Now, don't ask me how I know this. It's probably from the Greyhound bus. Tupelo, is that where that casino used to be?
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Only reason I say that, not that I've been there, but to get from Chicago to Clarksdale, Mississippi, I had to take a Greyhound bus. I don't know if my parents wouldn't take me to school or couldn't take me to school. They didn't go to college themselves, but I took the Greyhound bus with my daughter. And it was a very long ride. And I remember that the bus stopped in Memphis. We had a lot of stops, but it stopped in Memphis. And then I think Tupelo, because I think people were going to a casino. But anyway, that's here nor there. I found Mississippi to be a lot different than Chicago. But coincidentally, fun fact, my family on my mother's side, they are in Canton, Mississippi. And I went down there when I was a kid to visit. And so have seen parts of Mississippi at different points in my life. So let's talk a little bit about. So the book is about your life and your strength, but your life and strength. And we gonna give people some breadcrumbs, right? We're just gonna give them a little bit just to get them excited about the book. But tell us about being born with a severe illness due to a drug.
Well, this drug came from Germany from a pharmacy, and this drug was distributed in 46 countries. And this drug was for uh, pregnant women which had severe sickness, morning sickness. And this drug was popular. It was over the counter drug, and because you could get it without prescription. But the drug was not uh, it was not in the United States. The FDA did not approve it in the United States. So how it became to be in the United States, this man called Richard Morel, he had a wholesale business in Germany. So he decided to send 2.5 million drug pills to American doctors in the United States, to their clinics, to their offices, and they distributed and gave it to the pregnant women. So when my mother became pregnant with me, she had a very bad case of morning sickness, and so she went to a women's clinic, and they prescribed to her the drug called thalidomide. So when I was born, my feet was turned backwards. And this drug, it did a worldwide damage to millions of babies. About like 10 million babies were killed after this drug. Shortly after they were born, they died. And some, babies had disfigured faces, no arms, no legs, no feet, and did a lot of damage to their internal organs. So when I was born, my feet was turned backwards, and my mom had to lay me on like a little scooter because of my feet and legs. And my parents took me from doctors to doctors, which told them that I would never walk or live to be an adult. And so finally, they took me to a hospital called LeBarnard's Children's Hospital, which was a pediatric hospital for children with chronic diseases. And that was the place where they did all the surgery. So by the grace of God, there was hope there for me. So after that, the doctors, by the grace of God, the doctors was able to turn my feet, to normal. But I still had a long road ahead as far as being able to walk. And so, as growing up, and when it was about time for school age for me, I never did get to really go to school because of the number schedules of surgeries that I had to have. I've had 24 major surgeries, and I spent most of all of my childhood in the hospital. I had my dad, my mother and my father, they separated. So my mom left me with my dad. So my dad had to continue to take me to my doctor's appointment, or to leave me there for surgery time. So after a while, his pockets, got too expensive for the gas, prices. And so somebody was taking him back and forth. And so, Memphis, that's where all my appointments and and doctor's appointments and going to the doctors was in Memphis. I lived in Mississippi. Memphis was about an hour and 45 minutes. So that's a back and forth drive, constantly. So it was this hospital called Crippled Children's Hospital. This hospital was for uh, parents that could just leave their children there, that live, a distant way and without no cost, to their parents. So my father had to leave me there. And I was there among, doctors and nurses and strangers. But the doctors and the nurses took very good care of me and the children that was there, as well. And this hospital, I mostly stayed there until it was time for me to be scheduled to go to Lebanon for the surgeries. So I was just back and forth, to each hospital. But as I was at Crippled Children's Hospital, they would get us up early in the morning, put us in our beds, and take us to the dining hall, and we'd eat breakfast. We had oatmeal and bacon and toast, and after that, uh, since I couldn't go to school, God made a way. This was kind of like a hospital schooling, distribution place. And so after breakfast, they would put us back in our beds, and they would push us into this big old room that looked like the replica of the White House. And so that's where we went to. Me and the other children, we went to get our schooling there. And so after that, I'm gonna speed it up some. I had my last surgery when I was in the sixth grade. I was I could go to public school on I say about when I was like in the third grade, I started to really the doctors got me where I could walk, and I had to walk on crutches and braces. I went from a scooter, walker, crutches, braces, and wheelchair. And so, as I went to public school, I still was, going through the surgeries and going back, forward to the doctors for my appointments. But as I said, I had my last surgery in the sixth grade, and the seventh grade. When I went back to the doctors, they finally kind of released me from the braces and the crutches, so I was able to just walk on my own. And so today I am 57 years old when the doctor said I wouldn't live to be an adult. And how the drug affected me, um, as far as my growth is, I stand 4 feet tall. I walk with a limp. I can walk on my own without anything, but I cannot bend my legs. And I had to have heart surgery because the drug um, disrupted my heart, and caused me to have a heart murmur. And so I had to have immediate surgery because one of my valves had closed up. And so I can walk. I have all my hands, my fingers, no disfigured faces. And I have 9 toes, and I'm here today by the grace of God. He allowed me to live to tell my story so his glory can be displayed in my life.
I love it. So listen, you said so much that I really want to unpack or really kind of summarize, synthesize for our listening, viewing audience. So you talked about the number of surgeries you had up to sixth grade. You talked about the doctor saying that you would never walk, but you're walking today. You talked about being in a facility that was for children, let's just say with special needs. Today in 2025, we try to use terminology that is doesn't have the negative connotation. But I hear a lot of number sevens, and seven is my favorite number. And it's my favorite number because I gave birth to a little girl 33 years ago, and she did not walk until the age of 7 when the doctor said she wasn't going to walk. And so many things that have happened in our life are tied to the number 7. And you and I both know that there's a biblical connection, but I am reminded of how we went through the different phases of her journey with regards to going to what was known as a multi-specialty clinic. Different specialties evaluated her. They did hearing tests, they did blood tests. She too had to have braces on her legs. And one of the things that is constantly in my mind every day is I leave her in the care of others because she does not live with us. And every day in the back of my mind, I wonder, has someone touched her inappropriately? The things that happen behind closed doors. Now, a funny thing is, she don't like nobody to touch her. Period. So, if somebody touches her, they definitely are in for a fight because she's very strong. But talk to us about um, in that time period. And again, we don't want to give them too much what's in the book, but was there any abuse during that time period?
Yes, with my father, after I was able to be released from the hospital, I me and my father he was going to school at this cosmetology school. That's where my mother and my father met. And so after my mother left me with him, he continued to go there. And after his time was up, we went to Oxford, Mississippi, where he got an apartment, and we stayed there. And he started out to be a great father, but things had begun to change where he started doing a lot of drinking. He became an alcoholic. And during those times, he would leave me at home by myself in the dark with the TV on, and I would talk to God. And I'm telling you, I was about what, five, maybe 5 or 6. I'm talking to God. And if he didn't leave me at home by myself, he would leave me with, strangers, and they would be, I would be at their house, and they would be downstairs doing their thing and put me upstairs, and I'm talking to God, and I'm not knowing God or nothing, but I'm just talking to him. You know how little kids have like imaginary friends. That's how God was to me at that time. As a child, I would just talk to God, and he would let me know with like a sense of peace, like he had me, protecting me during everything that I went through. But or my father would leave me, or at one time he left me in the car with the motor running, one of his friends' cars, and uh I start, coughing, from carbon monoxide, and one of his friends had to come and get me out of there. And then a time he would leave me with babysitters, and one day one of the girls told me to go in the room and take a nap. And when I laid down, she had a pillow, and she tried to put it over my face. And that lets you know how the enemy was trying to destroy my life from the womb on to there at that time. And but God prevailed against the enemy, and he was protecting me. His power was displayed there. But my father abused me. Later on, he started beating on me. And the abuse got really severe at times. He would drag me out. I would say at one time he had met this lady, and she had 7 kids. So we all just moved in together, and that's when the abuse really got worse. He would beat me every day, constantly, just every day. And so how God got me out of that, I went to school one morning. This was beginning of my junior year in school. Um, I got on the school bus, and this woman, the bus driver, she said, "It looks like I know you." And I said, I don't know if you know me or not." And she said, "Who are your parents?" So I told her who my parents were on my mother's side. And she said, "Don't you know we can?" And she said, "I'm your cousin." And she said, "Would you like to come to my house and so we can get to know each other?" And I said, "Okay." And so I told my father about it, and he allowed it. And so that was the door opening, that the God was had opened that door. So I told her about all the abuse, what was going on with my father. So she called my parents, my mother's parents, my grandparents, and told them what was going on. So they came to pick me up. And so before they came to pick me up, he beated me one more time. He hit me in my nose, and my nose began to bleed. And God said, "I got to get you out of here before he kill you." And so that got me out of there. So when I went, my grandparents came to I picked me up. I was like, "Okay, finally I'm out of this now." And so, but things got much worse when I got to their house. They was telling me, okay, like my grandparents, they lived right here in the house. My mother lived behind them in the backyard, and they were telling me that I couldn't go to her house because she didn't want me there, and she didn't want me. So I had to live with my auntie. And so my auntie, she really didn't want me there, so I had to put up with her attitude. So, and then after a while, I graduated out of school, and I finally, uh, was out of school but I was still kind of living with my auntie, and so she went out of town and left me with her house, and so that's when I became pregnant, and my baby. Uh, my grandparents and my mother, they didn't really like the fact that I was pregnant. So they tried to trick me one day. They sent me to they said they was going to the store, but they took me to the welfare office, and they was trying to get me to give my baby up. But when I got into the office of the social worker, she said, "What's going on?" So I told her, and she said, "Don't give up your baby. I believe you can take care of this baby." So I heard the voice of the Lord when I walked out the door. He said, "Don't give up your baby." And when I went back to the house I was living at, and that morning I heard something say, "Shoot!" And I looked down, and blood was everywhere. And so I called the emergency room. They came and picked me up at this clinic, and the ambulance came to pick me up, and they took me to the clinic, and there wasn't nothing they could do there, but they put Pampers on me because I was bleeding that bad. And so they took me from hospital to hospital, which couldn't do nothing for me. And then this last hospital called the Med in Memphis, they could I had hope there. I had to stay there. I was in my third um months of pregnancy, and I had to stay there up to 8 months because I was at high risk of bleeding. So while I was in the hospital, I told the Lord, I said, "Lord, if you save me and my baby, we will praise you the rest of our lives." And I didn't know what I was saying then, but then you know how when you pray to God, He gives you confirmation. So the next morning, the confirmation came. This lady walked into my room. I didn't know her. She didn't know me. And I said it was an angel to this day. She said, "The Lord said everything's going to be all right." And she started to dance in my room. And then she prayed for me, and she left.
Wow. Listen, our time is up, but I want to just summarize, and I really want everyone to really, for your book clubs, purchase this book, Overcomer. Every story that you told was about two things. One, you overcoming, and two, how God used you and or others in this journey. And in your book, you talk about you are an overcomer. Everyone on this earth has a purpose. And it is my desire that through this book, through this interview, that people start to really do some self reflection and see that they too have overcome a lot of things, and that if you take the time to reflect on them, I believe write them down and start to move forward, you'll be able to grow, right? Because you're not holding on to your past. We all have a past, right? But appreciating that you have a past, heal from your past, really will allow you to walk in your purpose, be in alignment with your assignment here on this earth. Because I believe we all have an assignment. So I want to thank you so much for stopping by 52 authors, 52 weeks to tell your story about overcoming. And is there any final words that you want to share with our listening viewing audience?
Yes. Oh, in order to let go of your past, you have to have I call sort of a speak of a funeral for your past. You have to bury your past. I had to bury my past. And then after I had to bury my past, I had to ask God to give me the strength to walk away. And then I had to let go of the people and the circumstances that caused all of this. I couldn't hold on to them. And so I wasn't angry, but I was hurt, and I had all these bleeding wounds and I had a bleeding heart. So I decided to put a band-aid on these bleeding wounds and this hurting heart by jumping into relationships that did not give me the happiness and to heal me. So God had told me one day, he said, Jackie, the only person that can love you is me. And when he said that, I let go of everybody and everything. And I told God, you know, you deliver me. I wasn't pointing the finger at nobody, him, he, they. Deliver me. Do a whole new makeover in me. And so I tell the viewers out there, allow God to do you over. Because when you give your life to everybody, you have nothing else to give but to give yourself to God.
Wow, I love that. Well, I want to thank you so much for being a part of 52 authors, 52 weeks. To everyone else out there listening, be sure to like, subscribe, share this episode, and purchase your own copy of the book Overcomer by Jacqueline Williams. And it is available on Amazon. So if you are a Kindle reader, a physical book reader, definitely purchase your copy today. Thank you, everyone.